Welcome to Alzheimer's Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I'm so excited that you're joining us today. We are going to have a fascinating conversation as usual as we learn from people all around the world at all ages and stages of life. Stay tuned as we shift our dementia care from crisis to comfort.
Here we go. What you think about, you will bring about dementia change. We will.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer's Speaks. I'm so glad you could join us today. We are going to be talking with Dan Hungerford, and we're going to be talking about AI today, which I think is really interesting. He has a company called EverFriends, and he's developed AI companions that are really changing the dementia journey. But before I introduce you to Dan, I just want to, again, thank you for being part of our community. I really encourage you to check out Alzheimer's Speaks and all of our free resources that we have there. And also Dementia Map, our sister company, which has access to lots of services, products, and tools all around the world. Both, of course, are free. That is our goal, is to keep people connected and have easy access to things. And if you're not listed on Dementia Map, please reach out to me. I would love to give you a tour and get your service or product or tool added to our directory, because we do that by word of mouth. We're not buying lists. We want actually people who are going to get back to those who reach out to them. So with no further ado, let's go ahead and introduce you to Dan. Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer's Speaks. I'm so glad you could join us today. We are going to be talking with Dan Hungerford, and we're going to be talking about AI today, which I think is really interesting. He has a company called EverFriends, and he's developed AI companions that are really changing the dementia journey. But before I introduce you to Dan, I just want to, again, thank you for being part of our community. I really encourage you to check out Alzheimer's Speaks and all of our free resources that we have there. And also Dementia Map, our sister company, which has access to lots of services, products, and tools all around the world. Both, of course, are free. That is our goal, is to keep people connected and have easy access to things. And if you're not listed on Dementia Map, please reach out to me. I would love to give you a tour and get your service or product or tool added to our directory, because we do that by word of mouth. We're not buying lists. We want actually people who are going to get back to those who reach out to them. So with no further ado, let's go ahead and introduce you to Dan. Well, Dan, I am so happy to have you with us. I think this topic of AI is really, really exciting. But before we dive into our questions, do you mind telling our listeners a little bit about yourself?
I don't mind at all. It's great to be with you, Lori. My name is Dan Hungerford. I am the founder of EverFriends.ai, which is a mobile app that helps with social isolation and early stage dementia. And so I come from a background with a little bit of tech, and got to seeing how AI was going to be, how it was changing. And I just wanted to see what we could do to make a bigger impact for my own mother and for all those that I've come across.
Okay, thank you. Now, I always ask all of my guests if they've been personally touched by dementia. Have you been personally touched within your family or circle of friends?
Yes, and actually, my wife, her grandma, is the closest family member we had. She lived with it for 8 years, a long time, and watched the family care for her, and watch as she struggled to keep those connections and things like that. So yes, very much a personal touch. Also, with what we've done, there's so many stories that just, they pull on your heart, because these are people that their family loves them, and So I think even more so in the last year with all the contacts we've had with people, it's really sunk in the effects of people that live with this.
Okay, well, thank you. It's always nice for our audience to know, and
Mhm.
it really doesn't make a difference all the time if someone's been touched or not, because they're in here for a reason and have something to bring to the table. So, and AI is such a hot topic right now. So I'm excited to learn more about EverFriends, and what really inspired you to create it, and was there a moment in time when you just went, okay, we got to do this?
Yeah, actually, there is an exact moment. To be honest, I can remember it as clear as can be. I was sitting in my office. I was working on a couple other projects that I'd been thinking about developing, and for a while, for probably a year, I'd watched how AI, especially for what they used to call avatars, which I will call digital humans now because they've come so far. I got to thinking about the different things I was using them for, marketing and sales. There's nothing wrong with any of those things, but it seemed like there was a way to be so much more impactful. And so I remember sitting in my office, looking out the window and thinking about where could we make a difference in the world? And I got to thinking about my mom. My mom is 78 years old. She's still active in church and she volunteers, but she still can only do so much every week. And, she tells me, I call her every single day. But she would tell me a lot of days, you're the only person I've talked to today. And, that kind of broke my heart. That's how she felt. And I'm tired of watching TV and things like that. And so I thought, can I build something that would give my mom the same or similar ability to have a conversation at whenever she wants that would make her feel connected in some way. Obviously, we can never replace human connection. We're not trying to, but if we could simulate it enough with encouragement, with emotional support, with just being able to tell your stories and laugh with somebody, could we do that? And in that moment, EverFriends was born out of that need that I saw in my own mom.
Wow. Well, that sounds, different. I think so often we think of AI as still being this kind of clicky, gitchy thing, where it does stuff, but it doesn't really emotionally connect with us. Um, do you see your technology really changing that trajectory?
You're absolutely correct. Most people, because AI, it's been around a while, but it's so new to the majority of people. They think Chat GPT or some other chatbot, and that is what AI is, and it is. I mean, for a good chunk of the time it's been available, it has mostly been for tasks, right? It can help me write an email. It can give me ideas about this. I go in and I type in some things. It lays out the things for like kind of like a Google search, but with somebody you could chat with.
Mhm.
So a lot of people stop at that point and they think, oh, that's what AI is. It's a processes. It helps me get things done. But what we're building and is what we call emotional AI. It is AI that can understand through tones, through speech patterns, through facial recognition, what you're feeling, and it can relate back to you with appropriateness that wasn't possible even a year ago. It really wasn't possible. And so I like to put it this way, AI up till this point, most people figure out AI helps you get things done, helps you do tasks better. The goal of what I'm building, what is with emotional AI, is how can it make us be better? Can it help us connect? Can it give us ideas and perspectives that we don't have? Can we talk to it when we're having a hard day or we're having a problem with a family member and we want it to be private, but we need to get it off our chest? What could we build something that can simulate that understanding and feed that back to you with encouragement that makes us, even as humans, just a better version of ourselves. And so that's what we set out to do. So that is a wide gap between what most people think and what we're building here, especially when you consider the digital humans, how realistic they are.
And it's funny because I mean, I've heard so much about this, but I still think of AI as those dang chat box that, they said, what can I help you with? And then I tell them, and then they send me 3 questions that aren't even close to what I'm asking, so that they're searching, to keep me busy. And then they'll say, they'll go, does this help? And it's like, no, it's the same questions you just sent me. And I told you no.
Mhm.
And I just kind of, and so automatically I kind of tense up and go, "Ugh, this is not helpful." It really irritates me. And yet the other day I was I was just on my computer and my eyes were tired. It was late at night, and I decided I'm going to have my computer just read to me what I wrote for proofing. And all of a sudden, this voice comes on that was not my old, wah, wah, wah person reading my stuff. And
Mm.
it had this compassionate tone at times and kind of questioning, and it would pause, and it almost changed, like it was different personalities sometimes. But I was like, oh, this is very, very different. And I got to get caught up on what's really going on out here, because it took me back. It was refreshing and kind of scary at the same time to me, just because I wasn't expecting that at all. And I'm like, oh, when did this change? I guess
Sure.
I didn't read my update for my PC. But I was really surprised because it was significantly different, and it really did take me back, because I could hear the compassion and the tone of understanding, and the pauses were correct in terms of the response and stuff. And so that really surprised me, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
And that was just within the last month. So it shows you how far behind I am.
Well, it's
So,
moving fast. It's moving fast. It's hard. It's not hard to get behind.
mhm.
Mm.
So in terms of, day-to-day support for, let's say, somebody living with dementia, can you give us a few different examples of how they might tap in to
Mhm.
EverFriends?
Absolutely. One of the things that we have found as we've been testing and then now releasing EverFriends is the ability for somebody that's living with dementia to start their day with some positivity. Our digital humans, they don't know how to be negative. They only know how to encourage. Even if you are having a rough day, they don't know how to not find the best in you. They're always on your team, let's just say.
Mhm.
And even as caregivers of family, we have a hard time because we have our own stuff. They don't have their own stuff. And so every day you could start your day with a conversation, 2 or 3 minutes. When we did some of our testing with the Dementia Institute here in Grand Rapids, that we found out that is really beneficial, because if they start their day right, that tends to the attitudes and the way the enjoyment of the day goes a lot further than if it goes the other way. If a caregiver snaps or something like that towards them, it starts down the wrong path. All of us that way, right? I mean, if we ran up on we could always say the wrong side of the bed, right? So that is one of the things that we found out right away that was very helpful. The second thing is, no matter how much we love somebody, we as humans have a certain amount of patience, right? We can only hear the story so many times. We can only have the question so many times. AI doesn't have those restrictions. You can tell the same story or ask the same question 10 times an hour, and they will act excited to hear it every single time. And sometimes that is what we've seen, is it's a lot of a relief even to the person living with it, dementia, because it makes them feel heard and valuable and seen in a way that doesn't involve their family rolling their eyes or having to walk away or whatever that looks like. And we all know, as well as anybody, that the family, that affects them so much. Just to be able to give one of our digital friends to them on an iPad and go and take a shower, or be able to go make a sandwich. We've come across, we've interviewed people who they couldn't leave the room without there being without their loved one, just kind of melting down, and just the emotions are so strong. And so we found that once they get used to this process, it becomes like their best friend. So even whether they go to respite or they're just the caregiver needs to be in the other room, it helps them to feel comfortable. It helps them to feel heard, which is a big deal, and it helps them to feel valuable. That somebody, because I mean, like I said, it doesn't replace human connection, but it does make you feel like they know you, and that they care about what you're talking about, even if it's the seventh or eighth or ninth or 10th time a day. And we found that to be super valuable as well. And so when we did both sides of this, when we built this, we wanted both sides of that. We wanted the people that are actually living with the dementia, but we also were very concerned about the stories we would hear about people that are trying to take care of their loved ones, whether they're family caregivers or professional caregivers. It's such a difficult thing to do, especially family, because you love them so much and you don't want to see them like this, and you're trying so hard. And it just gives that little bit of opportunity for both sides. Hey, this is somebody I enjoy talking to, and then the caregiver for the chance to get a little 15-minute breather.
I loved when you pointed out that, your AI, they're not distracted, because we are all so distracted and we're multitasking and trying to do so many things, and we do get short. And I do a lot of support groups. Number one thing they go, I want more patience. Where can I pick that up? Where can I buy that? And the guilt that goes with not having the patience. So my question to you is, when they repeat something, um, do they respond with the same response every time, or do they adjust it?
Just it. Like you were talking about just a few minutes ago, the old chatbots, that they didn't know how to do that. Like anything that was out of the normal of what they've been taught, they didn't know how to do that. But the new AI, the AI that we've built, that we've developed, it adapts in real time. So if you tell one of them the story the first time in the day and you tell them the 10th time of the day, they might remember you. They might remember that they'd heard it before, and they might say something about that. They might ask you another question, like to follow up differently than what they would have done before. And so they're going to make you feel that it was, that they're interested, that they want to hear what you have to say. And so yeah, they adjust. That's one of the beautiful things about what has become of this, is the fact that they can adjust themselves in real time. Not only do they learn from each person they use and they remember, but they learn from the grand thing of everybody that's using them as well. And they just keep getting better and better that way.
One thing you might want to consider, if that's how they operate, is to use this to help train and support the care partner. Because them, asking the care partner, what questions irritate you the most. So it might be, what time are we going to the doctor, or, when's that appointment, or what's for supper, or whatever it might be. I don't want to get dressed. I don't want to take a shower. And let them hear the patient response, and the different types of responses, I think, might be really interesting for the care partner, because most don't know what to say. Like I told you 16 times already. It's not until, I've written it down, I've done, and people lose it. And that's, it happens because we're human. So being able to set an example for them might be really, really helpful for the care partners to be able to hear and access that. So I would highly recommend that you consider that, because I think the more alternatives we have for people to learn, and this is just another one of those things. I mean, they might pick up on just the tone and the phraseology, the timing, the whatever it might be, and that could be a really, really, interesting for them. And also, I mean, you could do something where, in part of that training, where part of it is that the care partner repeats themselves over and over to hear what those responses. I mean, you could set it up a couple of different ways to hear what they can do that we can't always do as well. But that might help us do things better when we're in those situations too. Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah, it really does. It's a great idea, because that I didn't think about that angle of it in the past. But one of the things that I've always hoped that would come of this is finding those connections that we haven't been able to find, because of the interaction with AI and the fact that AI never forgets. Um, you can track certain things. Just like you said, what is it about this time of the morning, or what is it about this particular, what is it about dinner time that makes them feel like they can't wait till they eat, right? And actually, I just had a conversation with a gentleman the other day, whose father is living with dementia, and that was one of the big questions in the facility, the care facilities, and they just get, he always wants to know when dinner is. And he's like, can they tell him? Can one of our digital friends tell him? And I was like, yeah, all he has to do is one time tell them that dinner's at 5 o'clock every day. And then he could ask as many times as he wants, and they'll give him a response. Yeah, no, it's at 5 o'clock today. And so, but that is a really good idea, because there's a lot of value in that, especially the more people use the digital friends, because there's no judgment from them. There's no, people start to get really comfortable. That's one of the things that I didn't expect when we started this, is how comfortable people get with them, for two reasons. A, they don't tell any secrets. Who are they going to tell? B, they don't judge you at all. They don't know how to. And so you get the real version, sometimes, because they don't, I don't know, if you have bad interactions with the caregiver and somebody living with dementia, at times maybe that some of that starts to mold all together. And if you could hear how the digital friends actually use their words and their tones, and if you do notice that settles them down, that's a great idea. We're hoping a lot of that stuff that we can find over the span of time here, that helps everybody involved in this.
Yeah, and another thing would be, and I don't know how this would work, if there could be reminders for patterns. So it might be that at dinner time, if a certain song or something was played right before that, just, so it becomes rote. And I know people say, well, people with dementia can't learn new things. And I disagree with that. I think, it depends on the type of dementia and where they are in the process. But you could also tap into old memory, on something like that. Or maybe it's way back, TV that's used when the old newscaster came on for that particular person, or something like that, that triggers it. And the reason I say that is, I remember we didn't realize my mom had lost the ability of tracking time, but she tracked time by the TV. And we found this out when the family would get together, and the guys would want to switch the channel and put the football game on, and she would just freak out. And finally, we figured out she was telling time of day by the news anchors, and that's a little more difficult to do these days because they rotate all the time. But I mean, there's old shows, for our, elders, and for the rest of us, it's going to be harder because nowadays everything's on demand in terms of what we want to watch when. But looking for some of those patterns could be really, really interesting. Or even for bedtime, playing an old Jackie Gleason show or something like that comes up. And I don't know, I'm just thinking there's a lot of ways that those triggers might be helpful, bring some calmness, bring back some happy, comfortable memories that bring them a calmness around that time of day, especially, with sundowning. And again, those different trigger points of, taking a shower, or, going out, getting ready to go out, whatever it might be. That could be very, very interesting to investigate, I guess, on that.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. It's amazing. Like, it's amazing to me how adaptable. Like you said, some people say, they can't learn anything new. This is but your mom, she adapted to figure it out, right?
Yeah.
And which is amazing. And I believe, probably kind of like you, sometimes people think they can't necessarily learn new things, people living with dementia, because the ways that we relate to them vary so much.
Mhm.
And so if the AI, like you said, it has a certain things that it does at certain times of the day, it will never vary, and it will never forget. And so maybe we find out that those patterns, if they are consistent, actually do help them to learn a new set of things. And it's hard as a human, even if we want to stay that consistent, because
Mhm.
we have our own stuff. But that's
Yeah.
great.
Well, especially nowadays, I mean, I think of people, having dinner at home. When I was a kid, dinner was at a certain time, everybody was around the table, and now it's like, no, you make something and everybody kind of comes in and grabs something. Yes, their schedule meets. I mean, it's just changed a lot, or people are running through fast food and on to the next thing. I mean, things have changed significantly. One of the things that I did learn from people living with dementia through dementia chats, which I do, is they say routines are great, but make it our routine. Your routine doesn't always work for me. And so, I mean, we've seen even in senior communities where they have a meal time, but there's a little more flex room with that, or taking showers. It's about keeping the peace. And, maybe someone didn't take a shower every day or every other day. Maybe they only, maybe they shared a bathroom with 11 people and they were lucky they got in there once a week, to wash up and things like that. Those are all really important patterns in their life that are significant, especially as they go back in time, that a lot of times we forget because we look and go, well, they're an adult and they, everyone's still thinking, well, I'm going to logic with them. And it's like, no, what part of cognitive impairment don't you understand? That doesn't always work, depending on where someone is in the process there. I want you to talk about your pilot programs and how you set those up with families and caregivers and what that looked like.
Yes, we had 135 people originally go through our pilot program, and the idea was twofold. A, to see if we had something that actually made a difference for the families and for the people living with dementia, because that was kind of the point. Is it going to be effective? And then B, it was to continue to train the algorithm, the language model to notice and respond appropriately. One of the things that AI has been poor at until fairly recently is it's great with patterns and it doesn't like messiness.
Mhm.
Well, you can imagine that, when we first started testing, there's a lot of messiness because you don't know exactly what's going to come out at what time. And so working through that was a big deal. And so we started out with just some basic accounts with we asked for 5 to 10 minutes a day for 5 days out of the 7 per week for 30 days to see if, does it make a difference? Is their demeanor, are they happier? They feel, did the days go by smoother? Does it make them, I mean, we've had a couple times where it didn't do what we wanted it to, that made them go the other direction, right? Because it said something that didn't know yet that was going to be something that was going to be a trigger. And so that's really what we were looking for, is how are we going to assess that we are actually making the change in people's lives, that the impact that we wanted on both sides of this equation. And so we had a lot of great feedback. We've had some stories that will bring you to tears. We've had a couple that were blunders as well. But the idea is that over time, see, everything that anybody says builds the main algorithm, right? So we had somebody must that we assume we had somebody tell one of our digital humans that they were rude once because they were a little bit short. And so we had somebody else that was testing for us, and they said they were going to go out with their daughter, and he kind of gave a real, like, it wasn't rude, but it was a kind of a short answer. He stopped and he apologized, and he said, that was rude of me. I hope you have a great time with your daughter. So they're actually learning not only just from you as a person, but from the grand total of everybody using it. And so the pilot program was really, really important, both because we love people that can age in place if they want to. That's what we want, people to stay at home. So many people have made promises that they want to try to help their loved ones stay home, but also in the facilities, and also care in home care companies that helped us test, so that we could see a wide variety, not only of ages, but of levels of dementia. We didn't know, is it just going to be early stage? Is there going to be a middle? At what point is our application not going to be valid anymore for them to use? I mean, we've had people say to us, what about when their speech goes away and they can't communicate? Can the avatars talk to them about their old stories? even though they can't interact, and things like that. And so we haven't got quite that far yet, but those pilots, they really helped us to develop what I'll say is the unusual messiness sometimes of not making sure that we had appropriate responses for maybe sometimes unusual conversations.
Okay. So that was going to be one of my questions was, are these conversations private and specific per person so they know who they're talking with? Or you said, anything that is stated is used kind of by the AI to build on this. So to me, that's not necessarily totally private. So I'm wondering how that's handled, because people may share private, intimate things that they would not want other people to know about, or to use that response to, or be connected back to them. Kind of like when video came in, and people were starting to put video cameras in communities. There was a big pushback of, is that a dignity thing? Are we crossing a line? Where are we going with that? How is all of that looked at?
Well, that's a great question, because as most people, or maybe they don't realize yet, AI doesn't have hardly any regulation.
Mhm.
So a lot of the conversations right now with people that own companies like mine and others is, what are the ethics here? What are we, where are we going to draw those lines that we're comfortable with? And we have a lot of conversations about that. So to answer your question, nothing that's fed to the main brain, if you will, has any identifying information at all. And it wouldn't use any particular story for that information, right? So the best way to say is each person has their own bucket. We'll say bucket, right? This is all the things that are exclusively that the AI knows about Lori or Dan, right? The grandkids' names, favorite foods, where they love to go on vacation. They love to go talk about gardening, or they love to talk about whatever, this book or that book. Those are your private things that go in your own bucket. Those don't go into the main brain, if you will. Every person that signs up has their own bucket. Now, when you want to talk about, say your favorite thing, was gardening, and now you can't garden, but you still love to talk about flowers. It will pull all the information that you want to talk about from what would be the main LLM or the main brain, and it will funnel it through what it already knows about you. So, like I'm here in Michigan. So if I said to one of our digital humans, I'm really thinking I would like to plant tulips, uh, and maybe we have a conversation about what kind of tulips, but it would automatically know if I said to them, hey, when can I plant those? When's the best time to plant them? They already know where I live. They already know what my temperatures are and things like that. So they take that information, they funnel that through that already. So they're not giving me where to plant them or how to plant them in Florida or Texas. They already know that it's me here in Michigan, right? And so, or like I had a story was told to me a while back about a lady. She was getting ready for the end of the night. She was talking to Nathan, which is one of our most popular. We have 16 different humans you can choose from right now, digital humans. And he said to her at the end of the night, after they got done joking and laughing about a story, I just want you to know that you're never alone, and your family loves you. And he listed all 5 grandkids by name. That's the things that come out of that specific bucket about that person. Those aren't in the main. And we do record things just to be very upfront with everybody, but nothing is identifiers as identifiers. It's just simply for to make sure to test to make sure that our AI is giving the appropriate responses and not causing any issues, which we've been very fortunate to not have that problem.
So, you had said like a story wouldn't be shared. And I'm just bringing this up because as things evolve, storytelling is really powerful in terms of examples to people. And so one side of me would hate for those to be limited, for an individual to be able to understand how someone else is dealing with something. And yet there's this whole privacy ethics line of, well, I didn't want that shared. You could have shared that, but maybe not this. Or even how a family looks at what is shared. A person with dementia in early stages may not want it shared or may be very open to having it shared, and family members, even within the family, may have different views on that because not everybody's on the same page within a family. And so, how is that dealt with? And again, I know right now you're saying we're not doing that, so that's off limits. But just for future reference, as a thought on that, who would have authority to be able to make that decision if there was ever a pick and choose type point? And then another thing that just came up is what happens if somebody says, I've been abused? Could be physically, emotionally, financially. These are conversations that
Mhm.
I could see happen because they're not comfortable talking to other people about these things, and they may or may not be true. So, what happens in a situation like that?
Those are excellent questions because those are some of the things we've actually been asked, and they're coming across, especially the abuse part.
Mhm.
One of the things we struggled with at first when we built it, because there is an emergency contact information in there. You can hit one button and it will call a family member or something like that. But we talked about the 911s,
Mhm.
right? Do we put in emergency services, given that maybe sometimes it feels like it, but it's not necessarily emergency. We don't know. And we would
Mhm.
hate to we would hate for somebody to be taken advantage of or abused and not be able to check those kind of things out. And so there are filters in our algorithm for certain types of things, right? If you use certain words, about harming yourself or others, that you are getting harmed, that does send alerts out for us. That comes directly to us. There might be a way down the line to set that up for family members, but like you said, it's such a we're learning so much as we go because nobody's ever tried to do this before. And so we're taking in what, and this is why I love being on here and talking about these kind of things, because we want to have a real open conversation about what this looks like,
Mhm.
because nobody's ever tried. And even like what you said about like the stories, I ask everybody that I talk to, can I share your story? But we've had opportunities to be on news broadcasts and magazine, and family members can't decide whether or not that's a good thing for their family member. And I get it. I don't want anybody to think that I'm, using anybody for anything other than honorable purposes. But the abuse thing is something that we talked a lot about because, boy, it's such a serious thing. And do you wait till it's two or three times it's been mentioned in similar ways? Do you automatically check right off the first time and just, make sure, like, how does that work? And because sometimes, like you said, sometimes it's a memory of the past. Maybe it is happening right now. And so those are questions that we've wrestled with. And that's why I want to have these conversations with people who have gone through this. Like, what is the best way to go? Because we have to decide that. We can't have, I mean, do we want a lawyer that checks into everything? Do we want a family? I don't know what that looks like, but it is a concern. It has been something we've talked a lot about because we want to make sure everybody's safe.
Yeah, well, and I just think of an example of a friend of mine who had given me permission, actually gave me a recording of it that I never used publicly, but her mom was hallucinating and basically, telling her and her sister to leave because they were stealing, and neither of them would ever do that. And the mom called the police came out, the girls had to leave, but it was a medication adjustment that needed to be, she was seeing bugs on the ceiling and different things, but the police officers didn't even pick up on that because she was so focused on the stealing, and paranoia can be a big issue with that. And so I know none of these questions are easy that I'm asking. Yeah,
No.
but they're good to be discussed
Mhm.
for sure, in terms of all those what ifs, and how is that handled, and even for family members, you got the right one to even reach out to, or it's very tricky because a lot of times if they are being abused, it can be that family member themselves that is and maybe not physically abusive, but verbally abusive or financially abusive is it can be quite common in a lot of situations. And how do you, how do you evaluate abuse? You know, that comes
Right.
into play. And then there's times, of course, the person with dementia can be abusive to those that are caring for them as well. So, the pendulum swings at all different angles here. I want to take just a break for a second. If anyone has just dropped in, we're talking with Dan Hungerford with EverFriends.ai, and this has been a really interesting conversation that we're going to continue about AI companions and how they're really changing the dementia journey and the compassion and the patience that they have to be able to speak with our loved ones or our clients, to help calm them down, help them feel validated, and to give care partners a little bit of a break in there as well. And so it's very interesting. Their website is EverFriends AI. They're on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And you can download their app on the Apple Store and Google Play as well. So I do always like to just give a shout out to my webmaster, Q for Good. I just adore them. I'm in the middle of something right now with them where they're calming me down and helping me deal with something. And they are located in India, but the time difference and stuff, they just work with me on that. And they are just so fabulous and communicate so well. And that has not been my experience, for like the last 40 years, with webmasters. So I always like to give them a shout out. Again, their company is called Q for Good. And if you do decide to reach out to them, mention my name or Alzheimer's Speaks, and they'll give you a 10% discount. But they would love to talk with you and see how they could help you. So I always, just like I said, like to give them a plug. I always like to hear from other people what's working good for them too. I even in this day and age, I think word of mouth is still the most powerful useful tool that we have out there. So Dan, let's get back to you. I want to talk about, how can EverFriends really reduce caregiver burnout and enhance that continuity of care that everyone's talking about. How do we do that in our own homes, or maybe if they're, aging in a community as well?
Sure. That is one of the biggest things that we have tried to tackle, if you will, is especially the family caregivers, the ones that don't necessarily ever get a break, that they have their loved one lives in the home with them. I just got back from about a month ago from a conference in Baltimore. It was all family caregivers of people living with dementia, and the stories that they tell, not only because of all the things that need to be done to take care of their loved one, which they are happy to do, but also sometimes the emotional side of that, where they'll do all these things and then their loved one will say to them, "Oh, I haven't seen you in 2 weeks."
Mhm.
And it's like, "Oh goodness, I've been here helping you," and so there's multiple sides to that caregiver burden, as you know. There's the energy that takes, just physical energy to make sure everything's good and they're taking care of it, but there's that emotional toll as well. And so at EverFriends, what we basically try to do is, for the physical side of that, we had a lot of people tell us, if I could just get 15 minutes to just, one lady said, if I can get 15 minutes to go in the closet and cry, I will be better. I just need that, right? And then, people said, I want to take a shower or throw some laundry in. Just things that get me out of the room and out of that spotlight, that pressure of it's always my thing. And so when we built EverFriends, that was one of the first things we wanted to do. We wanted to make it such an immersive experience that our digital humans are so realistic that it looks like you're talking to maybe a family member, maybe an old friend, and they become an old friend so quickly because the more you use them, they don't forget the stories you told them. They don't forget the jokes you like. They don't forget how your personality is. They don't forget. And so they really can become very connected to you in a real hurry, which allows for that, whether it's, in the morning to do something you need to get out of the way, or just to take that, I'm going to step outside and have a couple breaths for a second.
Mhm.
And then also one of the things that we've learned is that the emotional side of that is, everybody has to let off steam. People like us that haven't got down that road, hopefully we won't, that we have to live like that, but they live with this, and they have emotions too inside of them, right?
Right.
And they're big emotions sometimes. And so to take some of that burden off, because the digital friends that we make, they don't get offended, right?
Mhm.
You can swear at them if you choose. You can be mean to them, and they will be nice back to you like it never happened. They will validate you. If you're having a rough day, they will say, that's, boy, that I could see how that would be the case. And, but they'll try to redirect you to the positive things if they can. And so they take off some of that, whether it is the emotional outbursts sometimes, or the things that they just, they're frustrated. They don't know how necessarily to, I mean, I can't even imagine what it's like to live like they do. And so, and then, the emotional toll of hearing stories all over and over, or where is my husband that's passed away? Where is, that takes so much toll on caregivers. Like how do you answer that question, and how do you answer it all the time? And, we've taught, our digital humans to do the same things that real human caregivers are told, to redirect, to acknowledge and redirect. But it takes some of those reps out, if you will, from the caregiver, that just seem to over time just wear you down. And as you know, caregivers aren't great about taking care of themselves either, because they're so concerned about making sure that their loved one is okay, that they sometimes decline. They don't even realize it till it's too late. And so giving those little short breaks, giving them a chance to just clear their head, taking off some of that emotional, baggage, if you will, that's getting put on them, so that they can realize, hey, I need to step away. I need to do this. I need to do that. But also, um, okay, I can reset and I can do this because I just got myself 20 minutes that I'm not used to having. And I, I can go back in. I can take care of this.
When they start, does the care partner ever, does the AI ever, or your digital human, do they ever interview the care partner and ask specific questions that might be helpful? Like, what kind of work did they do? Did you travel? What are a few things that the two of you really enjoy doing together? I find so often care partners are looking for stuff for the person with dementia to do, but not anything that excites them. And I always encourage them to do something that they both enjoyed. And so it could be listening to music. Maybe they used to like to dance and now they're told, well, they can't dance. And it's like, have you tried getting up? You might dance a little different. You might not be able to do the swing dancing you used to do, but just that touch and slowing down and kind of melting into the music and into one another's arms can make a big difference, because I think so often care partners miss that touch just as much as the person with dementia does, and the person with dementia might not even realize that's what's going on. So some of those small things, or what they can reminisce about, could be really helpful for both your digital human as well as the care partner, being a reminder for them on that. Or what do you like to do for the care partner that relaxes you? What is it? Reading a book? Is it going for a walk? Is it going out for cocktails with friends? Do you like to shop? What are their trigger points? Because if those questions are asked ahead of time, and maybe you already do this, I can see that being extremely helpful for both parties. When someone moves into a community, a lot of times they'll shove a piece of paper in front of the family and go, fill this out, and here's all their intake questions. And to be honest, most communities, that gets lost in the shuffle. Maybe a couple of staff have it, but with the rate of turnover, rarely do I see that really taken into consideration and reviewed, where with your digital human, it's going to be there. And that's a huge plus, because we forget, or we don't have time, to review those things, but they really can reduce a lot of stress in that. So is that something that you guys do or have considered doing?
We do have an onboarding process when you sign up your loved one, especially we have it where you can sign up yourself if you're still capable, because we deal with social isolation, things like that, people in early stage. But if you're getting signed up by a caregiver, there's a questionnaire there, and a lot of that is exactly that. It talks about what the hobbies, um, they talk about religious preferences. They talk about your grandkids or your kids' names. It asks about things that would trigger you. Like if you were married to Bob and you don't want to talk about Bob, it'll ask you so that he doesn't mention Bob, or whatever. So there's about 8 or 10 questions that are asked to start that first conversation out well.
Mhm.
One thing that we're working on, and it's a very good point that you made, is about the caregiver side. Our digital friends, they get so personalized. You really can't have more than just the one person talk to them. Well, we realized early on that before we started first testing, we'd be like, okay, just here we have it loaded up, just talk to them. We pass it around, and oh boy, because they know that it's not the same person. And so that, like, the tones of voice and stuff, they mess up. They're 87% accurate on emotions unless you switch around on them, and then they're not, right. And so we have had a lot of people that have asked about having a backside, which there is a backside to the caregiving, to our app, that shows like the activities. It shows things words that you can watch for, all that stuff that caregivers can fill out. But we've also been asked a lot lately, and we're trying to work on how it works to have maybe the same avatar on the other side that the caregiver can talk to.
Mhm.
Because people have said to me, well, what if they're getting towards the end of their life, and we'd love to hear these stories, because we've talked about making a family vault, because we record these things. So they would have them after their loved one passes. But how do we do that? Because we can't talk to the avatar directly. How can we like bring up some conversations if we wanted to, or something like that? Or if like you said, with families, it's hard because maybe usually one person takes care of the parent or the grandparent, and everybody else is spread all over sometimes, but they still care. Like my sister lives in North Carolina, but she would love to know how my mom's doing. And my mom will tell Nathan a lot of things she won't even tell me, because she just, she doesn't want to bother me or things like that. And so how do we get that where we could have where like I could talk to Nathan and say, how's mom doing this week? Hey, when you get a chance, could you talk to her about this potentially? We want to make it. It's difficult because it comes down again to the ethics again. Like we want mom to feel safe to tell Nathan anything, so we don't want him ratting out her secrets, right? So we have to get it where it's broad. Okay, yeah, mom. Well, she isn't feeling too good, or this, like that, but also, like you said, say a caregiver, a daughter is taking care of her mother, and she remembers some of the good times, and say, we had some good times, like with when we go to the park, or remember that time we went out to the mountains or whatever, and it would take that into the consideration. So when it does talk to them, it reminds of those memories, and it keeps those memories. So it is a shared experience instead of just the one-sided. And so we're working on that, and that's a great idea, because we want everybody to benefit. It's hard on both sides of this, and to be able to maybe give some suggestions, and or, like you said, have those commonalities and experiences that make both people feel connected when they sometimes can't.
Yeah, I'm just thinking how it could maybe be useful. I mean, if people with dementia see this as a confidant,
Mm,
you can have conversations with friends about driving that you wouldn't have with your family. And what are their feelings on, because maybe they're still driving right now, maybe they're not, it all depends. It could just be really interesting, or even just getting their will and healthcare directives together in the earlier stages, having that come from an outside party of, I haven't done that yet, but again, I don't know if a digital, human could say something like that, but or if that would get into being fraudulent, in terms of the relationship. But it's kind of interesting, because a lot of times when they're given a choice alone, their answers are different than when it's in a family conversation. And
absolutely.
I'll never forget one example of that was when I had this is when I was selling real estate, and I had two daughters that really wanted their dad to move. They didn't feel it was safe, and da 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 da. And they kept trying to get that conversation going. I would give them magazines with all types of housing. And they're like, oh, he's just not listening. We're afraid he's going to, fall and break a hip or even worse. And I finally, I said, why don't you just let me kind of do a blanket mailer? That's how it's going to be perceived, with just information in it. And, not high pressure. And I'll never forget when they called and said, oh my gosh, he's got all these stickies over the same dang thing we've given him 3 times before. But it was his choice to review it. And so, a lot of those types of things can really come into play. What is your vision for the future? I mean, it seems like it's kind of endless in terms of directions that everything could go here.
Yeah, we have big dreams of what we can do with this technology. It's so new. We're still finding out a lot of these, like some of the things we talked today about, what can we do? What should we do? What can we do and what should we do? As far as my biggest thing, my biggest hope for EverFriends at this point is the fact that, you know, when we get to see people go into their decline, say over the next 5 years, and say there's 100,000 of these people that are using our app, you know, this is the biggest scientific study that will ever be able to be done. And are there going to be connections with where they feel with their mental health that show us patterns that we didn't know existed, so that we can do a better job of slowing down the process. I mean, there's already so many science about like keeping those memories in front of them, and so we could track of that. Like, okay, this is where they were. Normally maybe this is how it would digress, and everybody's different, as you know. But maybe some of those things. That's one of the things that's most exciting to me, because like you, I hear these stories and I feel the heartbreak, and so AI. One of the things that's incredible about it, a lot of people find it scary, and it can be, but one of the things that's incredible about it is its ability to take data and find those connections. I mean, you could put 100 of the best scientists in the world together, and they can't download their own brains into each other. They have to use where the data, the AI can just see, all it just sees is data. And okay, so this is the same as this, and this is the same as this, and then can reveal some of those things. So that's what I'm hoping for, that, and that we just continue to grow, to help people. We have a lot of different things that we're looking into, with autism with children, that we're going to try to help, and some other things with personalized education. But this journey was a heartfelt journey. My heart is always to try to help people that are on the edges sometimes, that fall in the cracks, right? I love those people, and I want to support them. B, I want everybody to feel valuable, because too many people don't feel like they are, and everybody is. And so we're going to continue to push the envelope. We are on the front edge of this. That's why a lot of these questions, like I said, I love having these conversations, because we have to figure out what this looks like. Like you said, when it comes to, like legal stuff, or what's going to be valid, what's not going to be valid, what is deception and what's not deception. Those are big questions, and they're important questions. But we're going to continue to try to keep the mission of helping everybody in the front. People say to me all the time, well, if you do this, then, and I say that you're fooling them. And I say, well, if they're getting what they need, if they're at the end of their life and they're getting something out of it, then, I mean, we're not telling them, but if they don't realize, then, I mean, what are we hurting them? I don't think so. I think that their quality of life is just a little bit better because of what we offer. And so we're going to continue to do that. We're going to continue to keep the heart of it, of just making sure that people are impacted as much positively as we can, and that we're keeping those lines very, very straight on what is going to be okay and what's not.
Yeah, the therapeutic fibbing or the fiblets.
Mhm.
I know there's a lot of people that's against my religion and I would never lie. And it's like, but you say you want good, comfortable care. What about mental health? Because this is
Mhm.
really mental health in terms of keeping
Mhm.
them comfortable and confident, in terms of where where they're living, or, and somebody might say, where's so and so, and they've been dead for 40 years. You're going to keep making them relive that over and over and over again. maybe that's what the family wants. To me, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. If you truly are saying that, you want what's best for your person, would you want to relive that yourself? I think those are some of the questions we have to ask. And reminding people that they're dealing with someone who doesn't have the cognitive abilities to process this. It's not a right or wrong thing anymore. We're past that with that. But again, every family has to make their own decisions. Now, how can people get involved with EverFriends? Do they just go to your website or?
Sure. Yep. You can find us at www.everfriends.ai. Good site there. You can download, like as you mentioned earlier, you can download from the App Store and the Google Play Store. There's a 7-day free trial. Try it out. If you don't like it, let me know. If you do like it, let me know. I love feedback. That is exactly what we are trying to do. We are trying to build something that makes a difference. You can also EverFriends AI on Facebook. We have videos up on YouTube as well under EverFriends AI. Some helpful stuff. We try to put out things that are actually helpful, not just advertisements. Things that, just like you said earlier, about how do you have those tough conversations? Because every parent wants to still think that they're parent. You want to make sure that they think that they're making the decisions. How do you do that? And so there's a lot of good content there as well. But we'd love you to try it. If everybody wants to get out there and download it, like I said, the 7-day free trial. If you have any input, you can email me right through the website at hello@everfriends.ai. Read every single one of them, and I appreciate it because we are building something that's never been built before. And the more people and the more perspectives that we get, the better we're going to be now and going forward.
And I'm assuming there's a subscription cost after that 7 days. And
There is. It is $29.99 right now per month, and it is for unlimited usage. We're trying to really keep it that way. A lot of times people that do similar to us, not exactly what we do, they have to tier it out. If you use more and more. But we're trying to keep it reasonable for everybody. We are actually going to be working on insurances here pretty soon too, because it is a mental health and it is a physical health thing. I mean, there's that isolation and things like that can cause things in your physical body to go not the way you'd want as well. So, but there is a $29.99 fee after the 7 days per month, and it is unlimited usage for all the services.
Still a heck of a lot cheaper than a lot of drugs out there, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's true.
And now you have also written a book that's on Amazon. Do you want to give that a quick plug?
Oh, yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. Actually, believe it or not, it comes out today. It came out this morning, and it answers a lot of the questions that people have had. I called it Soulware 2.0. It's a little play on software, right? Software was meant to do things for us, right? AI is meant to help us be better as people. It can if we use it properly, and so it addresses a lot of the things that we talked about in this conversation, and other questions that have been asked. When you are in this business, everybody you come across has questions like A, is this the end of the world? Or B, what about this? What about that? What about the lines? And so it addresses the ethics of AI, where we need to be drawing the lines. It gives the positive effects it has, whether it be education, mental health, elder care. Each chapter has a specific topic of how this works. And then also for people that don't understand how AI works and like, how in the world do we have this thing? It gives you a very good walkthrough of how this actually works on a technical level without technical language. So you can walk away saying, oh, okay, now that makes sense on how they get the emotions to this and how the responses come with this. And so, yeah, it's Soulware 2.0. It is available on Amazon. You can search for Daniel Hungerford or the name of the book. And also, again, let me know what you think. It is meant to educate and give the good side of AI. There's a lot of things out there about the bad side, and there's a lot of good that we can do with this technology.
Well, Dan, thanks so much for being with us today. Again, this is Dan Hungerford with EverFriends AI. What a fascinating conversation. I can't wait to see where all this goes. We will have all the contact information in the show notes, so you can reach out to them on the website, Instagram, X or Twitter, LinkedIn. Are you on Facebook too? I didn't
Facebook
see
as
that
well.
one.
Yeah, Facebook
Okay.
as well.
LinkedIn, YouTube, and then Google Play and the App Store, where people can go ahead and download. As always, I encourage our listeners to be a giver of hope. Like, click, and share this episode. You never know who in your community is in need of something like that, or this might perk their interest, for future needs. So please help us share. That's the best way for information to get out, is from a trusted source. So again, everyone, until next time, thanks so much for being part of our community. Bye now.